clear. I just want to appreciate the chairman's overview and just everything that he said in regards to just the overview of the history and what we're going to be presenting today, and just him as my leadership in the African People's Socialist Party. And of course, I just want to also salute everybody else who's on today's webinar, including my comrades Ilikia and Comrade Lisa. So I too have prepared something written and just so I can keep focused, but I'll start now. African people have been fighting for our freedom since Africa was first attacked by Europe. This has always pitted our struggle for self-determination against the colonial mode of production. We are talking about a mode of production that raped, pillaged, enslaved, and colonized peoples and lands, with both ends of the rifle, machetes, and any other types of weapons of mass destruction they can concoct to beat back our struggle. The colonizer is always developing strategies to infiltrate and destroy our efforts to free ourselves from their grip. Why? Because without us, they wouldn't be able to survive. A few days ago, Joe Biden was talking about how much his administration has accomplished for the people of his country. He capped it off by saying that the United States is the only country that has faced adversity and come back stronger than it did before. He alluded to the United States being a great beacon of freedom. Of course, this is the narrative of the colonizer. But what do the colonized say? Martin Luther King Jr. said that the United States was the greatest purveyor of violence. That was in 1967, and they killed him. There's a man who touted nonviolence in the face of violence. And in 2023, we started the year with the murder of Tyree Nichols at the hands of the colonial police. It doesn't matter that the police were Black. It matters that they are agents of the colonizers, carrying out colonial law. But unlike their white counterparts who can kill and get off, they go directly to jail. In my lifetime, there has been constant war managed by US imperialism. I was a child, but I remember Oliver North and what the US government called the Iran-Contra affair. The scandal, they call it. But it wasn't some trivial scandal. It was a serious network of US agents, government officials that attempted to undermine the Nicaraguan fight for self-determination by supplying opposition with guns and money in exchange for cocaine that was sold in the United States as a fundraiser for its efforts, resulting in the crack epidemic in African communities. I mean, this scandal had horrific consequences for millions of people around the world. It's sort of like defining Christopher Columbus discovering America as a little white lie. Like the colonizer trivializes everything and its impact on the people that they devastate. I mean, the chairman says that they are not devils and we have to be dialectical, but this is diabolical, right? You see the United States, the place where they say you can bring your tired, your poor, your huddled masses yearning to breathe free, the wretched refuse of your teeming shore, was just a call for desperate Europeans who sought a better life for themselves and did so on the backs of Africans and indigenous people. In order to get that better life, they had to stand at the feet of every hanged Negro, rape every Black woman, call every Black man a rapist, burn a cross at every home, bomb every church, and drop bombs on thriving communities. You come from a place of starving, filthy, disgusting, everything filled with constant violence to a land that was carved out of the blood of Native people. You can have that little house on the prairie as long as you're willing to defend it by fighting and killing Native peoples who have used that prairie for centuries for their family. No, Joe Biden. The United States is not the beacon of freedom you say it is. It is, as the chairman says, a prison of colonized nations. So when the FBI fixed themselves to draw up the indictment against the Uhuru movement, they were attacking the ongoing struggle for African self-determination, the African freedom struggle, a movement that has set a goal to extricate ourselves from the binds of colonial domination. Like Harriet, Nat, Marcus, Malcolm, and Nkrumah, Sankara, the Panthers, Bishop, and so many other African people who have fought for our freedom, the party has set a course and are organizing our way out. The party and the chairman are the vanguard. What is the freedom we are talking about? Because sometimes it's not really clear on what freedom is amongst Black organizers, right? But when we talk about freedom, we are talking about a freedom that overturns the current social world order, that destroys the colonizer. And by doing that, essentially destroys the colonized, that it frees people and lands up to determine our own future without the ever looming threat of violence that comes from the colonizer nations. These nations wage campaigns to infiltrate, subvert, kill, and destroy our struggle. Because without this parasitic relationship to the colonized, they would say that they could say that what Joe Biden says, that their success is dependent upon our oppression. The Uhuru movement, like so many other Africans who believe that they should be free, have rejected the way things have been for so long. We have rejected the centuries-long war against our existence and have the audacity to tell the world that we want our freedom by not cowering in the night, by organizing a response to the colonizer in every community that we can, building organizations and institutions that have become the beacon of light for the African working class. We are doing it out in the open in every community we can. We create Burkina Fasos, or lands of upright men and women. And what we create now in times of serious crisis and oppression is just the baseline of what we can achieve. Imagine if we had access to all of the resources and land, the incredible things we could accomplish for ourselves, and to know that when we free Africa, we can free the world. Obviously, this is a challenge to the colonizer. This is what they constantly develop strategies to undermine our efforts. So when they created this indictment and attributed our freedom struggle to the Russians and not to US colonial violence in the prison of nations that they've created, they're opening up another campaign of untruths, or continuing their campaign of untruths. Well, they've made a mistake, haven't they? The Uhuru movement is prepared to put the colonial state on trial if they ever try to pursue the delusionary indictments. We are dialecticians, right? We are political scientists, right? But we also are oppressed people with eyes, ears, and brains that can figure things out. We can connect the dots, All we have to do is look back at our history. In every nook and cranny, around every corner, the presence of the colonizer is there, foot on our neck, squeezing the life out of us. They have targeted entire movements like the UNIA, the Panthers, the Sojourners for Truth and Justice, or individuals like Claudia Jones and Paul Robeson, Ida B. Wells, MLK, Asado, all of these dangerous Negroes, right? So if we look at some of these dangerous Negroes and see what they've been targeted for, what the full weight of the American government has weighed down on them, we can look at Claudia Jones, who was a journalist, a Black woman journalist in the 1940s, a communist, somebody who has been organizing and writing around the Scottsboro boys trial. And she was targeted for over 10 years until they were able to push her out of this country and send her into deportation. If we look at also Ida B. Wells, who was a prominent African woman who was a part of leading the campaign, the anti-lynching campaign in the United States, also a journalist, also writing to organize and on the ground organize. And this is who the FBI has targeted. These are people who were concerned about the interests of the African working class, interests of African people who have been targeted and oppressed for so very long, and wanted to expose it. And we're exposing it to the entire world. This is what was a challenge and continues to be a challenge to the colonizer, who we've been up against since they first attacked Africa and colonized most of the planet. So, if we look also at the Sojourners for Truth and Justice, which was a group of African women who had organized themselves against U.S. policy in African communities, and one of its members included Eslanda Robeson, who was the wife of Paul Robeson, and we also know that Paul Robeson was also a target of the FBI as well, and Hoover's administration. So the FBI had designated this organization and said that their real desire was to incite a revolution for Black people. That they organized around issues that were that targeted Black people in our and created conditions whereby we were fighting for our lives. If the FBI said that our response to those conditions was an affront to their power over us, and of course it is, because the FBI is an entity of the colonial state. And so if they couldn't get to you, subvert you, and overthrow you and get you out of the way, they would often also attempt to recruit you if they could, right? And so it's really important that we understand that the FBI is not some bastion of truth and justice. And I don't think that anyone on this webinar right now even understands it like that. But I think overall, when we see the FBI, we should automatically know that there is no undercover goodness in it, that it was created as a weapon of the colonizer state as against people who have been fighting back to protect their interests and for their own self-determination. And even as recently as a few years ago, created this designation called Black identity extremism, right? Like, so it basically criminalizes any efforts that Black people are making to be self-determined and create our own freedom. So, as we can see that the FBI and the whole colonial state, regardless of whether you are on the face of the planet, is needs to be destroyed. And
1 minute.
yeah, so I'll end it there and just appreciate this opportunity to speak. Uhuru, comrades.